I am frequently amazed by the bizarre career paths that so many of those in senior political positions have taken prior to entering Parliament. On the couch here, I've had Liberal MP John Alexander, who was once a top 10 professional tennis player. Only recently, Queensland Nationals MP George Christensen told us how he attended a seminary to train for the priesthood. Believe that or what? Tonight, my special guest is the federal minister charged with cutting historic trade deals with world leaders, Dan Tehan. But how's this? Not only was young Daniel focused on being a lifetime sheep and cattle farmer, he also sold ice cream from the back of a station wagon. And strangely, his bridge to a parliamentary career was a bizarre stint as a diplomat working across places like Mexico and even Cuba. That is some life experience. Dan Tehan, welcome to the virtual couch.
Pleasure to be with you, Chris, and looking forward to the chat from quarantine in Canberra.
What day quarantine is it?
Day 12 of 14, so only the weekend to come. So we're getting there.
Oh, good. You haven't scratched your eyes out or anything yet?
No, I haven't started talking to the walls, although they're becoming very familiar at the moment.
I bet. Let's get to the cold, hard truth to start. Were you any good flogging ice cream?
Look, I don't know whether I was good or not. It was great life experience, though, meeting so many different people, going in and out of milk bars, service stations, talking to the people who were selling them on the coalface. It was a great experience and taught me a few things about marketing also. So, look, I've got to say, it's stood me in very good stead for the rest of my life. And doing that type of thing, I would encourage all young Australians to have a go at, because you really do meet and greet with a lot of people and get to see a different part of life that you otherwise mightn't be able to.
And seriously though, if you're a politician, it's all well and good to have great policies. If you can't sell those policies, it is a waste of time.
It is. You can have the best policies in the world, but if no one knows about them and you can't sell them to people, well, you might as well not start. So you're absolutely right. It's a great skill to be able to have, is to get out, be able to communicate with people and sell things. And I've got to say, especially in summer on a hot day, ice cream sold quite well, so it was a good initiation into politics.
I bet. You grew up in a little place called Maindample in country Victoria, the third of 6 kids on a cattle and sheep property. They were probably rather crazy and competitive days, were they?
They were. We were fairly competitive as kids, and especially when it came to my brothers kicking the footy or playing cricket and the tennis ball. But it was also a great family environment, and can't thank my parents enough for the loving family environment I grew up on. I look back, and I don't think you could have more of an ideal childhood growing up on a family farm with great parents who set a fine example. So I was really fortunate in that regard.
Apart from the phase you went through when you were literally mad and jumped on the back of bulls in rodeos, what were you thinking?
Well, when we're young and we're teenagers, and especially male teenagers, you do a few silly things, and it was all good fun, good country fun, and you get a few white knuckles when you're tied onto the back of a steer at the age of 14 at the Berejig Rodeo, but it's good character building, and when you come off, I tell you what, you can't get to the fence quick enough to get away from the steer.
I bet you could have that. Now, the fork in the road was at a period in the 80s when you and your brothers knew that you'd be farmers for life, but that changed because of interest rates, and you had to go and look for something else that you were interested in, right?
That's right. Paul Keating and that recession that we had to have, which saw small business and farm interest rates hit over 20%. And with 4 brothers, it was time for me to sort of decide whether farming was the future or whether I should look elsewhere. And given that I'd been to university, had a degree, I decided that it was probably time to look elsewhere. And I was very, very lucky to be able to get into the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade as a graduate, and my career took another path from there, and one where ultimately it led into politics, because I had stints overseas in Mexico City, including looking after Central America and Cuba, and then coming back and working for Mark Vaile as Australia's Trade Minister, and now here I am as Australia's Trade Minister. So yeah. It was a good fork in the road.
Yeah, exactly. Good base for you with what you're doing at the moment. Tell us very quickly, our viewers must know about this, the time in 1999 when you were being stalked by a group of Cuban intelligence officers.
Yeah, it really hit home that of our view of Cuba can be somewhat blinkered. We see it as a sort of a sunny socialist paradise. Well, when I was there, I went and met with the human rights officer at the US interest section, which is a building behind the Swiss embassy in Cuba, because there's not formal diplomatic relations, or there wasn't in those days. And when I did, he picked me up in his car. We were followed the whole way. We lost the Cuban security intelligence officers. We sat down and had a meal in an open-air restaurant, and then 10 minutes later, after we'd sat down, they came in, they sat down at the table next to us, they stared at us the whole way through dinner, and then as we got up to leave, we went to hop back into the car that we'd come in, and they were leaning against the bonnet, arms folded, trying to intimidate us as strongly as they possibly could. And it really hit home of that underbelly of intelligence officers, of movements being watched, and the lack of liberty in Cuba that was that Castro regime, sadly, really made sure that it was there and ever present to the Cuban people.
Right in your face. Okay, let's talk about now. You're in the big league of international trade. You started well. We were able to create a free trade deal with the UK. How difficult is it, though, getting in some kind of dialogue with China?
Look, it's very difficult at the moment, but it's still not a reason for us not to keep trying. Obviously, there's a lot of current disputes. A lot of those disputes are hurting Australian agriculture in particular, and our wine growers. So we have to keep trying for a dialogue. But in the meantime, we've got to sort of take a China plus approach and look to how we can continue to diversify to make sure that we're never too reliant on one economic partner, and that's what we're doing at the moment. And opportunities abound. Obviously, the UK Free Trade Agreement is one success story that we've had, but there's opportunities with India, enhancing our current economic relationships with Japan, South Korea, Vietnam and Singapore, and just visited those 4 countries to try and do that. And there's always potential with a very mature economic relationship that we have with the United States, and that's why I visited the US on this trip as well, because it's about enhancing our current economic relationships and then looking for those new opportunities.
So you personally are doing what? Both micro and macro deals, helping business talk to business elsewhere and create small deals, as well as major trade deals as well?
Absolutely, and like one of the things that I was able to witness was the signing of an agreement by a company called Australian Strategic Minerals in South Korea, but where we've helped and supported them build a relationship with Korean investors, and now we're going to see a rare earths processing plant and mine get up and going in Dubbo, which will create jobs there and importantly provide those important materials for the future that will go into electric batteries and electric vehicles and so forth. So it's very much facilitating those micro deals, but also those major outcomes as well through trade agreements.
So where do we stand now with the Europeans? Are you now out to do individual deals with European nations, or do you do a new deal with the European Union?
No, we want to do one collectively with the European Union. It's a very substantial market for us. It's our 3rd most important market when you take all the countries of Europe together. So we're in the negotiation process at the moment. We've had 11 rounds of negotiation. The 12th round, which will be the heavyweight round, will take place in the middle of October. And if we can really make progress on that, then my view is we'll be in a position to really shape the finalisation of that agreement. So making good progress, but still a little way to go.
Good news. Now, you were chairman of Parliament's Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, and you pushed very hard with other ministers to create rules to get rid of foreign fighters, citizens here who become foreign fighters. But how hard was it to rationalise the fact that you were also condemning their children, their innocent children, to refugee camps for years on end?
Well, look, these were always difficult decisions to take, and one of the things about the Intelligence and Security Committee is that it's a committee that has members of both the government and the Labor Party on it, and so we review legislation very, very closely. And when I was the chair, we were always able to get bipartisan outcomes, which then meant that we could get this legislation through the Parliament. They're always difficult decisions to take, and you have to weigh up how do you protect Australia's citizens, and then how those decisions might have unintended consequences. I always thought we got the balance right.
Back to you getting into politics, your mother, Marie Tehan, was the health minister in the Kennett administration in Victoria. Was she a major influence on you running for the seat back in 2010?
Yeah, look, no doubt she was very much a mentor and an inspiration. Not only was she a minister in the Kennett government, she put through health reforms then which became world leading and were picked up and put in place by all other states and territories, and even the federal government adopted some of the principles. It's called case mix funding, and basically completely changed the way we allocate resources in our health system, so it goes into those areas where they're needed rather than just providing them on a blanket basis. So she was a real inspiration, and also really, I think through her leadership, demonstrated to me when you're in politics, make sure you're just not there for the sake of it. Make sure you're there benefiting your community, making reform and putting through legislative changes that will make a big difference to your community and to the nation. And I think that's the real legacy that she left me in terms of what I've tried to do since I've been here in the federal parliament.
She passed away relatively young, but having said that, you got a chance to do what many sons and daughters don't have the opportunity to do. You got to say goodbye and thank you to her at the end, didn't you?
I did, and that was an incredibly special time for me and for the family. And one of the things that was quite remarkable about it and has never left me, Mum was sick for about 3 months, and we got a message from her carers that it was probably unlikely that she was going to live beyond the next 24 to 48 hours. And so all my brothers and sisters came from right around the nation to be with my father at that time. And she waited basically until we were all there. And the night that we were all there, we'd had dinner. She passed away later that night, and it was almost like she waited for everyone to be there before she went. So, you know, one of those very special occasions.
Sad, but beautiful in other ways. Now, you're a jogger, you're a runner, you do that in the morning. Please tell me you leave your mobile phone behind you.
I try to. I try to. They're a complete nuisance, mobile phones, and I do try and make sure I exercise every morning because I think it helps you stay fresh for the high demands of a job.
Well, hang on. How are you doing it now in quarantine? How are you? Where's the jogging? Well, you jog from one end of the room to the other, do you?
No, I've got an exercise bike in here with me, and so I set myself a routine. I get up every morning at 6 and get on the bike and pedal away.
Wow, all right. Well, I'll get out of your hair and let you get back to ironing the pillowcases again or whatever you do when you're in quarantine. Dan Tehan, thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure, Chris, and thanks for what you do. You make a real contribution through your show to the nation, so thank you.
You're very kind. Thank you, mate. Much appreciated.
Thank you, mate. Much appreciated.
Bye.
Okay.